Hi, this is the third video in the Intro to ILDAC series to go over some of these administrative housekeeping options at the bottom of the web page when you're using the web browser interface to ILDAC-32. The first option here is to upload an ILDA file. If you have your own ILDA file you want to upload to the Uploads directory, you can click this here. You can choose the file to upload. We'll go to downloads. It will upload this file. Uploads it to the browser and then pushes it up to the ILDAC-32, which takes a few seconds. Success. And let's return to the main page. Now if I go to the SD card in the Uploads directory, you'll see this laser graffiti hand now has been added to that direct upload directory. Fetch homepage from server. The HTML that you see here is hosted, saved locally on the ILDAC-32. In case you don't have internet access, it can still run most of the options or test patterns on the page. The web page does call some resources from the ILDAC32.com web server, some JavaScript and some other libraries in order to run. But if the firmware is updated and the HTML is updated, we just click this and it'll stop the output. Let's try it again. It'll stop the output, go to the web server, pull down the latest version of the HTML, save it locally on the ESP32, and then serve it back. Let's do a reload and see page will be updated. There we go. And you see it's updated as of right now. If you want to enable the Bluetooth radio to use the mobile app, we just click enable. It will reboot the ILDAC. After a few seconds, you can watch the OLED display for the current status of the reboot. And when it comes back, you'll see that the BLE device, when we reload the page, is now loaded. So this is the BLE device name that you connect to when using the mobile app. You can use Bluetooth and Wi-Fi at the same time, just Wi-Fi or just Bluetooth. You can't disable both. If you're on Wi-Fi, you can disable or enable Bluetooth. If you're on Bluetooth mobile app, you can enable and disable Wi-Fi, but you can't disable Bluetooth on the mobile app, obviously. And if you need to disable Bluetooth, you can just click disable, and it'll reboot after a few seconds. There. And I'll refresh the page, and BLE device is now disconnected. The advantage of that is it frees up a little bit of memory when BLE Bluetooth is not enabled. If you're running ILDA animations that have some large frames, sometimes the frames are too large to fit in memory with Bluetooth enabled. If you're not using the mobile app, you can just leave it disabled all the time. SD card enable disable. This just turns the SD card on and off. Doesn't really change anything. You can leave it enabled all the time. It's really there for housekeeping purposes. The serial console I mentioned in the first video. I can't demo that on this machine, but we can turn the serial console on, and you'll see in the status window the serial console is on. If you turn the serial console on and try to run some animated ILDA frames, ILDA files, they will slow down considerably because of the output being pushed to the serial port at the same time. So you can generally keep this off if you're not connected to a computer and monitoring the serial output, and that just goes off. Serial graphing is another debugging tool if you're using the Arduino graphing output tool. It outputs a graph of points per second and a few other parameters. If the firmware, if there's a firmware update available, you can click Update Firmware, and it shows all the available firmwares. These are mostly development versions, but you just click on the firmware to update, click Update. I'm not going to do it here because it takes a few seconds. Click Update, and downloads the firmware to the ESP32 and updates itself, and then starts running the new firmware. When you update the firmware, you really should go back and fetch the home page from the server because they go in sync. When you configure the Wi-Fi access points on your phone initially, if you need to add additional access points, you could do that right here. You can say configure new access point, and it brings up the access points nearby, and you can enter your password and configure multiple access points. Delete all stored Wi-Fi networks if you're taking the ILDAC somewhere else and it doesn't have your local Wi-Fi SSID. You want to delete the stored networks, so it goes back to Bluetooth mode, so you can connect to another Wi-Fi network somewhere else. If your ILDAC is set to connect to your local Wi-Fi and it's not available, you're going to have and you do not have Bluetooth enabled, it becomes inaccessible. So you'll either have to do a factory reset, which I can cover in another video. There's a factory reset button on the motherboard, so try not to get into that situation. I'll have this covered more thoroughly in fact pages. Toggle the debug console. If you're doing active development on the ILDAC-32, there's a variable you can turn on and off. This is separate from the serial console if you need to debug certain parts of the code. Right now there's really nothing that's enabled, but that's there if we need it. Reboot ILDAC-32 is pretty simple. You just click that, it reboots pretty quickly, probably in 10 or 15 seconds. Rebooting, and then as soon as it comes back, this should reload. Yes, there we go. Back to normal. The credits, I'll open this up. This is just a list of all the pages and links and libraries and helpful information I used in creating the ILDAC-32. I'm indebted to all of these people that put up all of these libraries and help pages and code and tools. Also want to thank these people for helping me develop this and pester them with questions. So I want to thank you guys for that. The last thing is just another web page on the domain, which is connection tips on connecting to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. When you first get an ILDAC-32, it's in Bluetooth mode only, so you'll need to connect via mobile app to enable the Wi-Fi and then join your local network, and then from that point on it'll stay on your Wi-Fi network. I'm not going to go through this. I'll have a video that covers all this information later, but there's just a number of steps you have to go through to connect to your Wi-Fi network. It's very easy. You only have to do it once every time you want to join a new network. Once you join your existing network, it'll remember that and boot up into that network every time. That covers all of the administrative maintenance options at the bottom. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.